Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The A Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Hello, A Better Way to Farm. My name is Kayla Livesey, and I am so glad that you could join us today. We're super excited to have you with us and to really dive into a question that we have been getting a lot, that I have been getting a lot, and I know it's a question that a lot of you guys are asking. And that's why we put this together. Our here is to provide value, and we're really passionate about education. And part of that passion comes from the person who we will be hearing from today. And I'm really excited to turn it over to our main speaker, someone that I'm guessing you are all familiar with. Really excited to have him with us. He founded A Better Way to Farm over 30 years ago with a passion for agronomy, for education, and a passion for American farm families. And that passion now over 30 years later is the reason that I am here, the reason that all of us are here is because he's really built a community that is just hungry to learn about how they can improve their farm, how they can take control of their operation. And today he's going to be talking about PKNS, why this causes breakdown in fertility programs, maybe some common assumptions that we've made, where true efficiency comes from, and how you can take that information and implement it to make better systems and better approaches to fertility in your operation. And I'm really excited to learn from him today. He has been such an influential mentor in my life, in agronomy, in life, and I love learning with him. I know that we'll all learn a lot today. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speaker, our founder, Mr. Rod Livesey.
Thank you, Kayla. I sincerely appreciate that. Welcome to everyone who's on. We're excited to have you here. It's funny how, Kayla, we talk about when we ought to do these things, and this came up, and then it's like you and Karen said, okay, we ought to do this. And literally in the last 10 days since you guys decided we were going to do this, I've had so many conversations and so many facts just come to light. Things I wasn't looking for, but they just came to light. And I find that interesting. You know, one of the things that we look at is what's going on in the environment today of agriculture. And we know that it's a scary time. And we know that we have to be making changes. And I was talking to John today, friend of ours from down in kind of southwest Missouri, and he was talking about the fact that he had reached out to us. Now, he's already been to the fundamentals of agronomy. He started to share some things. You know, sometimes when guys join the team, they don't always tell us the whole story. It's like we always say, why did you reach out? And, well, I saw you and this made sense or whatever. But today, now that we're farther down the road with our relationship, he was sharing one of the drivers for him was the fact that not too long ago, he took a soil test and he basically applied about 250 pounds of DAP and about 250 pounds of potash. And he pulled it again in the fall and it called for the exact same recommendation. So he did it again. And you could say, well, springtime versus fall time, you get some variation. Probably true. But here's the kicker. A year later, a full year into the deal, 500 pounds of DAP, 500 pounds of K. Guess what his soil test called for that next time? 250 pounds of DAP and 250 pounds of K. It hadn't moved. And that really got him thinking and got him going. And so we see a lot of things here. It's, you know, when we're talking about where does the fertility program break down, sometimes it just never worked in the beginning. It wasn't like it's working and then it quit. Now, there are things that happen. We apply enough stuff for a long enough period of time, we can create our own problem. We know that fertility programs break down when we apply too much nitrogen. We know that hurts us on phosphorus uptake. We know that it hurts us on yield. We know that it invites disease. And so as we look at this time right now, guys, this is not the year to be putting on more nitrogen than what we need. And if you don't know how to dial that in, that's one of the things you need to reach out to our team and let us help you with and let us talk to you about that. As we start looking at the PK and the S, where does the S break down? Well, part of the problem sometimes S doesn't break down. That is the problem. We see guys, they need sulfur and they apply yellow elemental sulfur and boy, they feel so good. because they go out and they walk and they see the yellow granules. And then a year from now, they go out and they walk and they see those same yellow granules. And all of a sudden, they don't feel so good. Why? Because they're not getting into the plant. And so we want to be looking at some kind of a sulfate, ammonium sulfate, ammonium thiosulfate, gypsum, some kind of sulfur that can go into that. Whatever we're looking at, we want to take care of and look and make sure that what we're getting out there is working. And the bottom line is, guys, inefficiency is going to cost us big bucks. There is no question about that. It is a well-known fact. If you use the fertilizer handbook, they would tell you about 20% of the dry product you have a chance of getting into the plant. Beck's and their data and their studies that they did, not trying to prove or disprove anything, just saying, hey, what is this number? And Beck's came up with a number of 10%. That 10% of what do I apply is going to go into the plant. I'm going to get some utilization out of. And people say, well, it's there for next year and all that. And today, I'm not, at least not this stage, maybe later on in the webinar, I may get into some of that, but I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to talk about is what are we going to do here? I think it's best exemplified. I got a chance to ride across the state of Nebraska with a farmer, and this was 20 years ago, and he was probably 30 or 35 years older than myself. His name was Melvin, and Melvin was one of those people that I just wanted to learn from. And you drive across Nebraska, you get a chance to talk a long time, right? And I said, Melvin, what tip would you give a new guy starting out? And man, in an instant, he said, it's this, Rod. He said, the problem is we get it backwards. We've been so ingrained, so taught that what we want to do is broadcast everything. And then if we have any money left over, we'll row place it. And Melvin, who was very successful, very, very successful, said, I did it differently. I row placed everything first. And if I had money I wanted to hide from the government, I felt like I wanted to do something with it, maybe I would apply some dry. But I never planned on applying broadcast, ever. And that news stuck with me. That was a revelation for me. And I think that as we look at how that's inefficient, and in today's environment, yeah, we could probably sell, thank goodness, we can probably sell some almost $11 beans and some almost $4 corn, maybe just a tinge over $4. But as I start listening to Right on the Market and a lot of these places, the ones that I do trust, I am deeply concerned about what the future looks like for what we're going to have for an upside. Probably in the month of May, we will hit the high, historically speaking, and that's going to tell us a lot about what we're going to be able to do. We cannot afford, Kayla, to have those kinds of inefficiencies. The P, the K, the S, those all have tremendous roles. I want to talk about potassium first. I'm going to go with the K because we know that that's our plant health nutrient. That and copper, those are the two that are, everything is important for plant health. Those two are particularly important for that. So make sure that we have adequate potassium, make sure we have adequate copper, and then make sure we didn't use too much nitrogen. We know that too much nitrogen comes at an expense. Number one, there's the cost of buying it. I was listening to one of our guys shot a video, and he talked about the fact he has literally cut his nitrogen use by 50%, and his yields have went up. Hear me well, they've went up. His disease has went down. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that's what happens there. So let's talk about that. We know too much nitrogen, way too much growth, too much vegetative growth at the expense of no root growth. Now we got a tall plant with a lot of vegetation, not a root system to support it, and not the root system that we need to take it up. Where does that root system come from? Phosphorus. Row-placed phosphorus, guys, is our friend. It is our good friend. When we row-place that phosphorus in an orthophosphate form with no impurities, with no heavy metals, we know heavy metals mess with the DNA. We know cadmium messes with emergence. Those are well-known facts. You can dig those up on the internet. Any Google search will bring that up. You don't have to get as advanced as ChatGPT. You can just go to Dr. Google and type in the effects of cadmium on emergence of corn. And it really hurts you, and it doesn't take much. And so to row-place that phosphorus and have it there so we can drive those roots. Kayla, you knew Francis. Francis Childs is a good family friend. And we learned so much from him, but mostly what I learned was how to run a shovel. And you went out, and when the corn was 2 foot tall, he wanted 2 foot of roots underneath it. And you don't do that by putting on way too much nitrogen and not enough starter. And so we want to make sure that we've got that phosphorus in there, that we're driving those roots down. We know when we drive those roots down, when we have that adequate phosphorus in there, now all of a sudden we can get energy. Phosphorus is energy. And that's what we need to get that plant off and screaming. We know that everything we do on the front end of that life of that plant compounds throughout the growing season. That's why we train foliar feed at V3. And people say, well, why don't you wait till way later when you got more residue? Because you impact the most yield early. And you impact the most yield early with phosphorus. The starter, what it does, we know from the charts, we know from the university textbooks that we need 0.4% phosphorus in that shoot. That leaf material should be 0.4% phosphorus. And we know the seed will provide that from about the day you plant it till almost V1. And we know that the soil should provide it once you get to V8. The question is, what do I do from V1 to V8? The answer, if I'm going to have the right amount of phosphorus in that plant, I'm going to have to put on row place starter. I want to use an orthophosphate. I want it to be pure, and I want it to go right into that plant. And we're going to place it right in the seed zone as long as the organic matter and the CEC allow us to do that. We start looking at those numbers on phosphorus, and you know there are three. I'm not going to get up on my soapbox today, Kayla, and preach on the Malic 3 versus the other test, the S3C test through Midwest Labs. We're just going to take it. It is a given that we want to see the S3C. If you have questions about why, reach out to us. We'll talk about that later. But the fact is this. There are three numbers that we get in a phosphorus rate. There's P1. When we use the Bray test, we get a P1. That's readily available right now. There's P2. That's the reservoir coming soon. And then there is the third number that you can only get if you ash the soil down till its elemental forms. It is widely agreed upon. Many textbooks will say this. Dr. Mulvaney says it. In the top 6 inches of soil, on the average in the Midwest, there's about 6,000 pounds of phosphorus. The question is, how am I going to get that to start converting over and become available? And the answer is, we got to have the soil working correctly. But as we look at those three forms, now let me say this, if we get a pH above 7, we're also going to run that Olsen bicarb test. Why? Because it's more accurate. But nonetheless, there are three numbers that we look at in the forms of phosphorus. Going back into the potassium, what are some of the things that it does? Well, it regulates water. One of the reasons that it's responsible for plant health. I don't know about the rest of you. I spoke with my good friend Adam today over in Illinois, and Adam said, Rod, we are the driest county in the state of Illinois. And it really got me thinking, Kayla. I'm looking out the window here right now at our house in Iowa. And we've been a lot of places. We've been to Fargo, we've been to Minneapolis, we've been to Kearney, we've been to Lincoln. And Kayla, think about this. How many places do we drive that we saw mud? The answer is none. Adam was telling me he blades snow part of the time in the winter. He said, we were blading the last snow off and the dust was flying from under the snow. And guys, that to me tells me we better be able to regulate our water this year. We've got to go into this year with a plan in mind that says, I'm going to regulate water consumption. I'm going to mitigate stress by doing all of the right things. And guys, right now in the world, there is everybody and their dog selling you a product to mitigate stress. I'm not going to get into those, but let me say this. You want to mitigate stress? Jim Rohn says there are no new fundamentals. And anybody who comes up with a new fundamental, you should be suspicious of. Mitigate stress by doing everything you can correctly. Mitigate stress by having the right amount of potassium in the plant, not in the soil, in the plant. Mitigate stress by having the micronutrients that you need, because if that plant's starving for one micronutrient, it is sucking up water, trying to get that one missing micronutrient. And then it does luxury consumption, and you're burning water through respiration that you don't need to be wasting. Mitigating stress, there are some real fundamentals here that you can do to do that, and that's what we're after. When we have that adequate K, we are more stress tolerant. When we have adequate K, we know that we get better yield. We know that yield formation comes from that. We know this from the work published by University of Nebraska at Lincoln, that I'm going to give you guys some numbers. You can write these down. You can look up the study if you want, but basically to grow 175 bushel corn, they had to uptake 255 pounds of K. So 175, 255. To move from 175 to 250 bushel yield, the uptake had to go from 255 to 475. In other words, to add 50% to the yield, you had to get pretty close to adding 100% of K uptake. Now, K doesn't become available in the soil until it gets to 75 degrees soil temperature. And most of you, by then, you're at V8 or beyond. And so what do we got to do? Force feed potassium. That's why we like a 318-18 or a 315-19-3. We want that phosphorus. We know it's important, but we know that K is important early also and throughout the growing season. As a matter of fact, here's a little trivia question for you. By day 50 in that corn plant, does it need to have taken up more K or more P? The answer? It has to take up over 100 pounds of potassium, and it only needs to take up 22 pounds, I believe, is the number of phosphorus. 4 times more potassium. You want to mitigate stress? Provide what the plant needs. Don't let it be hungry. Sulfur, why do we need to address that? Because number one, it's protein formation. We want to grow quality grain. We want to grow quality feed. We want to grow quality forage. And that's where that comes in. And also, I love the sulfur product for so many reasons, but part of it has to do with soil chemistry. There are things that sulfur does in the soil. You have too much magnesium, you're going to burn up some sulfur there in the chemical reactions. A lot of times there are things that happen with that, but the other thing that it's going to do is it's going to help us be more efficient in our nitrogen. And too many guys have just said, I don't want to mess with sulfur, I'm just going to put on more nitrogen. That hurts your yield. It hurts your yield for a lack of sulfur. It hurts your yield because too much nitrogen always cuts yield. That's a fact, guys. And that's getting to be more and more and more documented over and over and over again. Where do we lose the efficiencies? There's so many places that we lose that. First one, fixation. I look at some of these guys, and I see these guys, especially in that high pH, and we look at tests and they got a P1 of 5 or 6, and they've got a P2 of 70, 80, or 100. And of course, the soil test, the book says your P1 levels are bad. You need to blow a bunch of 1846O on or 1152O. And you blow it on and nothing changes. The P2 goes up, the P1 never moves because it's getting fixed up, tied up by the calcium. There are so many things. Most of us have an enormous amount of aluminum in our soils. And one of the things that happens is that phosphorus will tie up with that naturally occurring aluminum, which does bring me to the point that whatever we do not want to be applying more aluminum when we're putting on our fertilizer. We have way too much aluminum already there. Guys, we do not want to confuse applied pounds with available pounds. The people who come to you and try and scare you, and fear is still a great selling tactic, and we are not here to bring fear. We are here to bring awareness and make you ask good questions. And I hope you go to your current supplier and you start saying why, because we believe that as the guy writing the check, you have the right to know why, and you should know why. Why am I spending this money? Why am I doing this? What happens when I apply that 100 pounds of 1846O? What am I really going to get out of that? And so we get people, they come to you and they scare you and they say, hey, you're going to go to a liquid program, and here in just a few minutes, I'm going to run through some numbers. I'm not cool enough to screen share and have it all typed up. You're going to have to write it down, but I want you to. Did you know there's a correlation between your thumb and your brain? And when you write it down, you're much more likely to remember it. I'm going to help you with that here just in a few minutes, because I want you to know these numbers. I want you to understand how this works. You're never going to get available pounds and applied pounds to equal in a dry broadcast. That's not going to happen. What are the other things that hurt us on efficiency? Timing, how far in advance of the crop did we put it on? What's going on there? What about placement? If you're going to use a dry program, would banding be better? Absolutely. Are we big fans of dry product? Not particularly. There is a time and a place. There's a time and a place where we will recommend it, but it's based on the soil test. It's not based on, well, that's what we've always done. That's a terrible reason to do it. Or everybody else is doing it. Terrible reason to do it. We travel a lot, and we travel through some towns, and the Midwest is beautiful, and I love this, but we travel through an occasional town where it would appear that nearly everyone is doing methamphetamine. That does not mean it's a good idea. Everyone's doing it is not the deal. Everyone's broadcasting, maybe, but maybe that isn't the right answer. Maybe that's not what we want to do. So we've got timing, we've got placement, we have form. If we go through the 4 R's and we truly actually embrace the 4 R's and we don't just talk about them, and we figure out we do have to have the right product, meaning it's coming from the right source. We do have to put it on at the right time. We do have to put it on at the right rate. We got to put it on in the right place. And the same people that bring you the 4 R's very, very frequently are telling you to do something different. We need to be suspicious about that. Guys, the pH of our soil makes a difference on availability. It makes a difference on the form of what we ought to be using. The CEC, that cation exchange capacity that we spend so much time talking about in the fundamentals of agronomy, is huge. Why? Because it impacts how many cations your soil can hold, and particularly potassium. Guys, when you have a low CEC, the odds of you getting your K levels up to a really high level are non-existent. You'd be better off to go buy a Powerball ticket than to try and get your K levels way up on a low CEC soil. If you have any questions on that, reach out. We've got the charts and we can talk about it. Let's talk about organic matter. And I actually ran through the numbers, but what if we could show you there's a method by which we can add 0.37%, in other words, about a third of a point of organic matter per year. Guys, every time you raise your organic matter 1 point, when you go from 1% to 2%, you've just increased the water holding capacity of your soil by 27,000 gallons, or about 3/4 of an inch of rain. That's amazing. It also means there's more nutrients in there being held, being released, being recycled, and that is your friend. So that's a big, big, big factor in what we do here. And we encourage you. Our question is basically, is everything that we're doing going to pay off this year? And is it right for the long term? Now, we can do one or the other. We got guys that take shortcuts and they do something that's only good this year, but it hurts them in future years. That's not sustainable. And it's definitely not sustainable when I see these people come out and say, well, if you'll do this for the next 7 years, the angels will sing. Boys and girls, the angels better sing in November, because we've got to get refinanced so we can farm again in 27. I ain't looking for a 7-year fix. I want to do the right thing for all 7 years, no question. But I got to do the right thing for this year too. Guys, you can. You don't have to be an either or. You don't have to make the decision. It's not exclusive, it's inclusive. It's, yes, we can do the right thing for this year. We can replace the phosphorus, we can replace the potassium, we can use the micronutrients that will feed the soil biology, which will make it work better. We can do all the things we can to improve root mass and drive organic matter and make our soil better next year, year after year after year. That's what this is all about. And that's doing the right thing long term. I want to talk about the availability. And guys, this is where you need to pull out your ink pen, click it on, and bear with me on some numbers. I want to compare and contrast 100 pounds of 1846O. Make sure we start with the basics here. 100 pounds of 1846O to 5 gallon of starter of 31818. The 1846O, when you apply 100 pounds, what are you applying? 18 pounds of nitrogen, because it's 18%, 46 pounds of phosphorus, it's 46%, 0K. In other words, you're putting on about 64% active ingredient and 36% of who knows what, but it ain't plant available nutrients. So if you got 46 pounds of phosphorus and you use the numbers that Bex came up with, very, very solid numbers of a 10% recovery rate, that's 4.6 pounds of phosphorus into the plant. Well, let's be generous and go with the fertilizer handbook and say it's 20. We'll pretend with you. It's 20%. Now you're at 9.2 pounds. Now let's compare that to 5 gallon of 31818. 3% nitrogen, 18% phosphorus, 18% potassium. That means out of every gallon of fertilizer, you're getting about 2.2 pounds of phosphorus and 2.2 pounds of potassium. So that means you're dumping in the seed trench 11 pounds of phosphorus and 11 pounds of potassium. Guys, that's going in the plant. And people say, well, your plants are yay far apart. I have a question for you. Did you ever go dig up plants? When you guys plant 30,000, 32, I don't care if you're planting 24,000. When you go dig, those roots grow together. And everything in that seed trench is coming in contact with those roots. That's how we shove so much phosphorus and so much potassium into that plant. So when we start talking about who's getting more into the plant, we have a very conclusive number on that. You can do the tissue testing and you can check it. I invite you, do that. Do some broadcasts, do some row placement, do the tissue test, and see what happens. We already know how it's going to turn out. We read the book, but you can go ahead and study it and do it, and I encourage you to do that. Guys, that's why fewer pounds applied out yields, outperforms, outworks the higher number. They're all trying to come at it from a fear that you ain't doing enough. And I think about what John told me today when he put on 500 pounds and it didn't move anything. Over the last 2 weeks, as we've done the bonus session at the Fundamentals of Agronomy, and I've had more and more people come up to me and they talk about the fact that they're getting confident. They're saying, yeah, let me think about this. Let me share this, because they go home and some agronomist somewhere says, well, you ain't putting enough on, man, them numbers are going to be bad. And my response to that, if I'm the farmer, is this: excuse me, but my numbers suck right now. And 20 years of doing this way didn't get it. It didn't get it. And if 20 years didn't get it, why is 21 the magic number? Why not take a chance? Why not say, hey, we've got people who have been doing this for 20 years, and this is what they're seeing. They're seeing their P1 numbers creep up. And then they come to you and they try and scare you, you can't get the yields. Again, Kayla's down at Jerry's house, and it stuck with me so hard the last time Jerry spoke. He said, all of you want to know about my soil test. Let me tell you about my soil test. The first time he broke 300 in the yield contest, he had an organic matter of less than 2, and he had a P1 reading of 13. The book will tell you, all the people in the industry will tell you, you can't do that. And yet he did. And over the 25 years he worked with us, he watched those levels just creep up. Did they go up fast? No. But they went up, and that's what we're after. Doing the right thing this year, getting the yield response this year, and doing the right thing long term. And so when we start looking about this and we say, hey, give us some, you want real world examples? We have them. We do field days all over the Midwest. Last year, I think we had 17. This year, I expect us to have between 25 and 30. And I believe that it's going to be a significant deal. And when you go and you see the results and you see the root pits that we dig and you see those results, and then this year, thank you to Andrew and to Kurt who helped us, and they said, hey, why don't we test this for available? And so we went in and we horizontally soil tested, probed all the way down to 6 feet. Guys, plant available potassium in the top 6 feet. This is not elemental. Mulvaney tells you in the top 6 feet there's 360 to 480,000 pounds of K. You can debate that and argue that, say there's only 4. I don't care. Fine, whatever. But here's what we know based on these multiple site locations that we did that in. There's 3,700 pounds of available potassium, not in some raw form you can't get. Plant available potassium in the top 6 feet. Now we're back to driving roots that we opened with. Now we're talking about why do we want to get down there? We want to drought proof our crop. There's a lot more moisture 6 feet down than there is at 6 inches. And guys, that's one of the things that we can do to do that. Those are real world examples of where it happens, where it goes, and where people get the results. Guys, I just want to encourage you, don't be afraid to ask why. And if you happen to tell someone and you say, hey, I'm going to go to a liquid program, and they come unglued on you and they say, you got low numbers, come back at them. Say, yeah, I've been working with you for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and here we are. And yet here we are. Guys, we've got to move to the next level. And quite honestly, row placement is going to be key. Foliar feeding is an additional thing you can do. It is not where you start. And this is on PK&S, but guys, those micronutrients are the key that opens that door to the next level and makes everything else work right. One of the things we want to encourage you to do as we move forward here is to evaluate your current program. Pull out your soil test. I'm not picking on anybody, but I'm going to name this one. I got a test in the email this morning. It was a test that was ran through Penn State University, and they're no different than a lot of the others. That test had 0 micronutrients on it. How am I supposed to make a recommendation? It didn't say if it was a Malake 3 or if it was a break test, but I know it wasn't a break test because it didn't have a P1 and a P2. And Some of the tests, this one did have CEC, but a lot of them that we get don't. So number one, evaluate your current fertility program, but you need to start by evaluating your soil test. If Kayla and I could tell you the number of people who send us soil tests, and the soil test says 150 pounds of 1846O, 200 pounds of 0060. That is not a soil test. That is not analytical work. That is not data. That's a loadout sheet. It's designed to tell the trucker how much to put in the truck to spread on your farm. That's not a soil test. I want to encourage you guys, if you're going to evaluate your program, it starts by evaluating your soil test. I'll be so bold as to say this. Right now, we get done. We'll be done here in 15 minutes or so. You go get your soil test. Pull it out. Look at your boron number. What is your boron number? Because if it's 0.8 or less, you're suffering a yield decrease because of a lack of boron. And for those of you that pull out your soil test and it doesn't have a boron number on it, well, the recommendation there is fire your agronomist. That's what it says. Okay? Because it's 2026. This is not some kind of voodoo. It is well accepted that we're not getting boron anymore. You want to know snake oil? Snake oil is the people who are trying to sell you something they've been doing the same since 1965 and want you to believe nothing has changed. Snake oil is trying to scare you into saying you're going to mine your phosphorus out of your fields, but you've been farming those farms for 200 years and we've never replaced zinc, copper, boron, manganese, magnesium, or sulfur. So somehow in 200 years, we didn't hurt those levels, but in 12 months, you're going to destroy your phosphorus or your potassium. Please think logically about that and just say, let me think about this for a minute. But go look at the 0.8. Benjamin, I'll answer that right now. 0.8 parts per million on the boron. Plain and simple, cut and dried. No reading, move on. Get a new person. You know, I'm a big St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan, and it has been painful the last 2 or 3 years. And they've had some teammates that needed traded. I'm not real sure that we don't have a coach that needs to be traded. All of us in our farming operation, we may have some people on the team that need to go get some other team. Maybe they'd be better off playing for Detroit than playing for you. And we've got to figure out what it is that looks like as we evaluate this current fertility program. Guys, I think it's critical that this year that we immediately identify the nutrients that we have been over applying, most likely to be nitrogen, followed closely by phosphorus and potassium. Look at your application rates, look at your soil test movements, and see what's happening. I want to encourage you, if you do nothing else as a result of being on this program, you never call the person who invited you here, you don't reach out to Karen with a text at the end, run some strips of less nitrogen. Pick a couple of spots, strip the field, and cut your nitrogen rate 20 pounds and then cut it 40 pounds. And pay attention. Because the number of people who see a yield increase by using less nitrogen is a much higher number than you would want to believe. That's how we're going to make a difference. Not over applying anything. Guys, we're not asking you to turn a Freightliner around on a dime here. We're asking for you to make some small changes. Small changes, small incremental changes result in big gains in efficiency. It's not hard to set up. And I don't want you to be scared. You go, man, my planter's not set up. Don't let that scare you. Don't. Because we have people that you can talk to, and we can get you equipment from a Chevrolet to a Cadillac. We can get you all the way into a Land Rover if that's what you want to do. And there's all kinds of steps in there, but you can set that planter up and you can make such a significant difference. I had one grower that went through the program in St. Louis, and he's like, dude, my planter ain't set up and I can't afford it. And I didn't argue with him. I just said, Dave, I want you to go price your dry program, because he hadn't done that yet. And I priced out our program. So here was the deal. His dry program was going to be about $20,000 more than his liquid program, plus setting up his 24-row planter. He was still going to have money left over. And all of a sudden, he had a new attitude about what he wanted to do. So those are some things that we can look at. Guys, but what are some of the key takeaways? I hope you got the numbers written down on what it is that we're going to do in regards to how do we replace 100 pounds of 1846O with 5 gallons of 31818. Number one, I hope that you've got it figured out, that you've got to get the adequate phosphorus and potassium into that plant in the first 50 days. And I hope that you've learned that the soil temperature has to be 65 degrees for soil phosphorus to become available and 75 for soil potassium to become available. And so some of those things that we can take out of this and that we can go with and say, hey, there is a better way to do this. We can make some changes, and it's not too late. Some of you Southern boys are, I know there are guys watching this from way down south. There are guys that are already, they're stream barring wheat. They're getting ready to, or as they say down there, they're fixing to. That's not something we say in Iowa a lot, but I do speak Southern as well as Northern English. And it's not that hard, guys. You've got 2 to 3 weeks here easy to get that planter set up if that's what you choose to do. We're not here trying to sell you anything. We are here wanting to make a difference. When I started this business 33 years ago, our goal was to make a difference. Our goal was to change the face of American agriculture, and that's what we're attempting to do, one grower at a time. Whatever we can do to help you, let us know. Reach out. If somehow you stumbled onto this and you don't know who to get a hold of, you can text Karen. Text the word profit, just the word profit, to 641-919-5570. Kayla, you want to start funneling me some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a testimonial. This is Zach from Indiana. He said, year 2 with the program, P1 of 6, organic matter 1.9, CEC of 11, 264 bushels per acre corn, and 70 better than our farm average. And I think that really speaks to your point of we don't just need a solution that might work in 7 years. We've got to find something that works for this year. So we've got a lot of questions. I'm seeing all of those come in, which is great. We have some things that are a little bit outside of the scope of PKS, some stuff on foliar feeding stuff, some stuff on micronutrients. So we'll get to those at the end if there's time. But if you're looking for more information about how all of those things fit together, please check out our podcast or our social medias. You can just type in A Better Way to Farm. Rod does a great job with the 12 Nutrients of Christmas series. And we also have a book that he wrote on foliar feeding. So lots of great things to check out there. So couple different questions that we'll start out with. We'll do some of these rapid fire. What's the pH of DAP?
Someone's asking me that?
Yes.
The pH of DAP would be above 7. It's about 8.0-ish. That's why we tend to apply it here, because we already have acidic soils, and so we put it up. And a sidebar, I'm not convinced that's the right idea, because sometimes the farther apart the pH is, the quicker the chemical reaction and maybe the less available phosphorus. But the pH of DAP is in the neighborhood of 8. MAP is about 4.5.
Some examples on corn. Do these principles still apply to beans and other crops as well?
Even canola. Yes. The guys are, we're using this in wheat. We're using it in, I just talked to the guy today. He said, what about, I'm going to grow a bunch of milo. Our system, milo works amazingly well. When you use this system, it responds to management. That's the bottom line. Yes, it works the same on soybeans.
How about liquid in furrow versus dry 2x2? Is there ever an instance where you would put the two together? And then if you're doing like a 3-18-18, are you going to put micronutrients with that? Are we only going to do starter? What are some application guidelines for how people could implement this?
These are all great questions. I've seen a couple others come through just in an instant. But let me say this. We have a handful of people who have had some really ultra low soil tests. And so they have chosen to ban some dry product 2x2 and go in furrow with the 3-18-18 and the micronutrients. Guys, get your ink pen out right now. I want you to write this down. I want your thumb touching your brain. Never put boron on the seed. Never put boron on the seed. If somebody sells you a product, says you can put this on the seed, either there's not enough boron in it to make a difference, or they don't know what they're doing. We had a grower up in the Dakotas last year, Kayla. Some company convinced them to put their boron was spatial, and they put it on the seed, and they had to replant several hundred acres. So yes, all the micros except boron can go in the seed trench up to 5 pints per acre. Someone said something about doing 2x2 liquid. We got some guys who run dry 2x2. We got some guys who go in furrow and run liquid 2x2. We have a lot of people using furrow jets because they want to raise the amount they can put on. I know my friend Chris up the road here, he's doing that. I know here on our own farm right across the way, when we plant corn here in about 60 days or so, we'll be putting on a 16 gallon. We bought a farm that had a P1 reading of 3, and we're choosing to build those numbers by applying liquid, and we're putting 16 gallon down. Still less money than a dry broadcast program. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Had a question. I'm going to read you the whole thing because I really want to talk about efficiency. Something that we've been looking at this year is not only the scope of what we're doing, but how can we overall with your whole program to help cut input costs as possible and really make you as profitable per acre as possible. So someone said, how do you feel about banding dry 2x2? We have always placed 100 pounds of MAP, 40 pounds of potash, 16 of AMS, and a micro pack that way. And I love listening to you talk about efficiencies, so I'd like you to speak to that for a little bit.
Okay. It's better than broadcast. Let me say that. If you're going to use dry, it's always better to band it or strip till it. Okay. In my heart, I believe that's a very heavy load of salt to be putting even just 2x2. That really concerns me. What is it doing to the microbiology in that zone? And let me say this, I picked up someone new I'm kind of paying attention to and listening to. And that individual says that we need a 50% mix of bacteria and fungi in the soil. And right now in America, we are way bacteria heavy because most of what we have done has destroyed the fungi. Fungi seem to be less stable, less tough. And so everything that we're doing has depleted those numbers, and we're getting that out of hand. I'm not going to get on a soapbox today, but it's why I'm concerned about putting bacteria on in bugs of a jug, because I believe we're only creating a bigger discrepancy between those. Now, efficiencies, in my humble opinion, there is zero efficiency in a micro pack. I want to be crystal clear on this because I can't find two farms on my field, can't find two fields on my farm that test the same. One needs this amount of manganese, this one needs more. The odds of that micro pack being what Chris needs in Iowa and what my other friend Chris in Oklahoma needs and what Zach needs out there in Indiana, that's never going to happen. And so I am not a fan of that. I have a friend on here, Preston, who had a grower that he was working with literally cut yield with a micro pack. They had too much iron in the soil. They had too much iron in the plant. Their micro pack had iron in it, and they cut their yield by using it. So efficiency comes from soil testing and putting on exactly what we want, exactly where we need.
Row-placed fertility and water uptake. Someone said that this was their first year in the program, and it took them about an extra week compared to all the neighbors before they started drying out and wrapping up in a drought. Do you think that came from how they were placing their nutrients, or what might have been the reason for that?
All of the above. Okay. Number one, it's about the placement because the roots didn't have to go looking for it. They just had what they needed, and that plant was more content. Remember, I talked about luxury consumption. B, the fact of the matter that they put the micros in with it. So we had the micronutrients in the plant. It wasn't looking for just magnesium or just manganese or just anything, because to the best of our ability, we put everything we could in there. C, salt dries things out. Guys, if you want to do something entertaining, go get you a handful of potassium chloride. I remember my mentor, my first mentor, that he come into my house, he had a jar full of potassium chloride. He said, give me a potato. I was like, what do you want? He cuts a potato half and he puts potassium chloride, just like 6 or 8 granules on one half, leaves the other one lay, says, send me a picture of that tomorrow morning. It was astronomical how much moisture that potassium chloride pulled out of that potato. And you say, well, I ain't got potatoes. No, but you got dirt. It's doing the exact same thing. And so that's the bottom line. All of the above work together to make him more. Oh, and as an added bonus, he drove roots deeper than everybody else. So he was accessing moisture that the neighbors couldn't get because his roots were down farther because he drove them by doing what he did.
I'm going to, again, combine a couple different questions here. We'll probably just do a few more. I'm looking at the time. We've had some people say, maybe I'm a new farmer, I'm just getting started, or I have a small operation and a big equipment overhaul isn't something that's feasible, or I rent my equipment. How can we take what we've learned today and still implement it if someone finds themselves in that kind of a situation?
Well, first of all, even if it's rented equipment, I wouldn't be afraid to set it up. With the suppliers that we have, we can come in here and set it up very inexpensively, and you can sell the used equipment next year if you're not farming, or you can put it on the next planter, or you can do whatever. we appreciate the grower. I don't care if you're farming 100 acres and it's your first year, you're just getting started. We're all for you, man. We're cheering for you. No matter what size you are, please remember it costs a lot less to set up a 6-row planter than it does a 24-row planter. And we have systems. I think we can safely set up if a small guy's got a 6-row planter. I really think for less than $2,000 we can have him set up. And I think that it will more than pay for itself 3-to-1 in the first year.
Had a question about 1034.0. Would you still use 1034.0 if you were doing some 318.18 in furrow, or what do those co-applied, applications look like?
First of all, I would never mix them together. So if I was going to do that, I'd want a second system. We have some people who apply 318.18 in the trench and have ultra low FOS numbers, and so they're putting some 1034.0 over 2x2, or maybe putting it on in a strip till. We are not opposed to that. That's what that tends to look like, Kayla. But I want to encourage guys, run some strips where you don't use a 1034.0 and see I think you need to prove to you what does work and what doesn't work on a regular basis. Just some small strips, not a massive test plot, but a couple of strips. And so, yes, we have some people that are doing that. I would not commingle them because I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out.
A couple people asking about, okay, well, if it's not good for me to be broadcasting at planting, what about in season? Had a couple people ask about broadcasting for a foliar application. What would your recommendation be there?
A foliar application, guys, we'll have to do another webinar. I assume we're going to do a webinar on foliar like in late May, Kayla?
That's correct.
And there is the book that they can get on Amazon. Someone said, where can I get it? Just go to Amazon and type in my name. It should show up and go from there. Yes, Ryan, whoever you're talking to should be able to help you set up your 6-row planter. But nonetheless, foliar feeding has got to be a liquid. It's got to be the right products. It has to go on the right way. All you're doing mid-season is slinging some nutrients on. And you've actually significantly reduced the odds of those nutrients getting into the plant, because now you've shortened the time frame of the growing season. And remember, that granule has to break down, has to become part of the soil solution. The micron size has to get down to less than, like nanometers in order to go in through the root. And the odds are it is not going to happen. And so I am not a fan of broadcasting anything mid-season.
Someone asked, who was Rod referring to that teaches about the fungi and bacteria ratio?
I'm going to have to dig that number up and try and get him. Keep this person's name. It was just somebody that I've just recently stumbled onto, and I don't have that name, but I'm following him more and more. And so, Kayla, write that down. We'll try and get a message. Whoever you are, you need to text your number to Kayla or to whoever invited you here, and we will attempt to get that back to you.
Message that person my number right now so we can get in touch on that. Anything you would say in closing? We've covered a lot of different things, but maybe the one thing that you would recommend people take to actually apply what they've heard today.
That's an acronym. I used to listen to an old musical group, and they were called the Goads, GOAD, and it actually stood for go out and do something. And I want to encourage everybody on here, be a Goad. Go out and do something. Don't do it exactly the way you did it last year. Don't be afraid to make a change. Don't be afraid to do something better. Don't be afraid. Don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can. So whatever excuse you have, you get with your person and they will talk to you about how we can work around that. But guys, here's what I know. In Chinese, the word for crisis, I don't know Chinese, but I've been told that the word for crisis also is the same word they use for opportunity. And I believe the people who pay attention and make some money this year may be in a position to have some opportunities over the next coming winter and spring. There may be some ground to pick up. There may be some real good buys on equipment. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you have a tremendous opportunity here, but we've got to come out and do something. And that's my encouragement. But let's get together and let's move forward.
Thank you, Rod, guys. We really appreciate your time today. Our team is, in my opinion, the very best there is. So if someone invited you, take those questions to them, get in touch with them. If you're not sure who to reach out to, you can text YIELD to 641-919-5570. And that number is also in the chat. You can screenshot it, 641-919-5570. And I'll leave you with a testimonial that someone sent me here during the webinar. Testimonial from a new client. 3,000 acre farm utilizing your program. They just sent this to me. Just shy of $300,000 in savings, liquid versus dry. That number includes saving money on my nitrogen. Guys, like Rod shared, the opportunity is here, and our heart is to do absolutely everything that we can to help you take advantage of it. So with that, we will wrap things up here. God bless and have a great week.